Okay, so if this looks a little similar to my last video, it's because I filmed these on the same day. Obviously, I'm a busy college student and I don't really have time to film videos most of the time. So I'm knocking some out during spring break. Now on to the real content. A little over a year ago, I made a video talking about the new gesture navigation system that Google had implemented in Android 9.0 Pie. Now with Android 10, I'm still salty about the name thing, but that's not the point here. They've changed it yet again. And it's worse, but also not. Let's take a look. So the original Android gesture navigation system, or the main one that everyone knows, had 3 functions controlled by 3 buttons. Home, back, and the recent overview thing. Now these 3 functions have been a staple of Android from the beginning, and hopefully that will never change. But with Android Pie, Google attempted to simplify the controls, while still keeping the 3 functions. Now home and back remained as buttons, but Recents was now accessed by swiping up on the home pill. Now in some implementations the back button would disappear when not needed, but this wasn't the case in OnePlus's implementation. That's the one I used, so that's what I'm going with. So for Pie, it's 2 buttons and 1 gesture. I made a whole video, which I referenced in the beginning, explaining why the system was both good and bad in relation to material design. Now, if you haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend watching it, because this is a follow-up to that, so I'm going to be referencing that, so it'd be good for you to know that. Now, in that video, I said that I didn't believe the gestures were copying Apple. Now, let's take a look at what Apple has. Starting with the iPhone 10, they got rid of the physical home button in favor of a software home bar. Now, pressing it does nothing, but swiping up goes home, swiping and holding goes to the overview screen, and there's no global back function in iOS, which is stupid, but that's, again, not the point here. Now, let's take a look at Android 10's new gestures. The pill and back button have been replaced by a bar, which you swipe up on to go home, and up and hold to over... Damn it! They just copied Apple. For back, though, you swipe from either edge of the screen, which... Alright, I'll accept. But for the most part, it's still a blatant copy of Apple's system. Okay, fine. Fine, they copied. But is it any good to begin with? Does it fit with material design? Now, last video, I mentioned 2 main principles in material design. Number 1, motion focuses attention and maintains continuity through subtle feedback and coherent transitions. As elements appear on the screen, they transform and reorganize the environment, with interactions generating new transformations. Now that last bit is important, interactions generating transformations. And number 2, material design is inspired by the physical world and its textures. Material surfaces reimagine the mediums of paper and ink. Now to demonstrate these points, especially the second one, I created a little index card example to show how the motion of gestures can affect items in the real world, and how that can be translated into system navigation. I concluded that with these 2 principles, the Pie gesture hybrid navigation was good, but imperfect. Now, this new system is almost identical to OnePlus's version that they introduced as an alternative to the pill last year. Now, in the last video, I said that this one was a terrible implementation that copied Apple, and the motions were terrible, the animations weren't properly driven, like the whole waiting for recents and then it just suddenly happened thing. Like, it was... I talked about it last time again, go watch that video. All in all, it was a mess. Now, the new gestures this year from Google polished those animations, which I'll explain in a bit. Now, the main difference here is that OnePlus's version had the back button swiping up from the bottom corners, while now it's from either side. New version, better, again, I'll explain in a bit. So on to the system. Do the gestures properly drive the motion for navigation? Let's take a look. First, home. As mentioned before, this is done with a swipe up. Okay, this one's actually pretty good. Especially with the animation, you can clearly see how the motion dismisses the app off the screen. 1 out of 3 so far. Overview, you swipe and hold. Okay, in terms of a physical metaphor, I can see it as like picking up a card and then holding it next to the other apps to see, so... Okay, fine. So far, so good. But what about the motion itself? Honestly, it's jank. No, that's the best explanation I have for it. It's similar enough to swipe to home that I find myself constantly trying to do one and then accidentally doing the other depending on just how long it takes me to do it. Additionally, the action of holding just feels weird. I don't know how to explain it, but normally with gestures, you would execute in one swift motion, then done, finger off the screen, that's it. But this whole idea of a motion and then a delay at the end, it feels like I'm trying to do a gesture, then changing my mind. So while the gesture may translate into the physical world, the motion does not maintain continuity, and again, it's just too similar to the home swipe. Now, another additional feature that sort of appeared last year was the ability to easily switch to the previous app by quickly swiping right on the pill. Now, this function is improved this time around. The motion does translate better physically, picking up the card and moving it as opposed to scrolling through. But the actual execution is still very hit or miss, to the point where now I never use it. Lastly, the back function, which is now a swipe from either side. OnePlus has changed this slightly from Google's by only making the bottom 70-80% of the screen have this ability. This way you can still access slide-out menus or hamburger menus, whatever you want to call them, by swiping near the top of the screen. Although as phones are getting taller, we'll see how that works out. But besides that, most of the back swipe actually makes sense. Think of it this way. Every time you make a change in an app, those changes appear on a new card on top of the previous one, creating a stack with the history, so to speak. Swiping from either side dismisses just the top layer, revealing the previous one. And in the overall scheme of things, swiping from the bottom controls all the layers, allowing you to go home. And using this gesture in real day-to-day use, I actually don't hate it. It's definitely an improvement over OnePlus's corner thing from last year. So, we're ending up with 2 out of 3. Now, additionally, the new home bar is thinner, taking up less screen real estate, so that's a plus, I guess. And for those wondering, the assistant is summoned by swiping up from either corner. It's not entirely material design, but it isn't necessarily not MD, so I don't know, I don't really care. Plus, I mostly just use my voice and say the words to summon Google Assistant as opposed to a physical gesture. So I'm going to move on from that. So overall, as much as it pains me to say it, this new system doesn't suck. At least in terms of material design, it's difficult to argue against it. Now, with the exception of the recents overview, that's still terrible. But the rest of the navigation works. The motions do flow naturally, they do trigger the changes in the environment that make logical sense, and they can be translated into the physical world. Again, except for the recents overview, I'm not going to get over that. Now, how would I change it? Ideally, I would prefer the home button to stay a button that you press to go home, and then a swipe up goes to recents. So basically the same as last year, but with the new back motion. But I know that'll never happen. So in this case, I would replace the recents motion with a swipe up and to the side. Oh, I know. That's even more like Apple. But I mean, it's better than swiping and holding it. And at this point, we might as well embrace it. Currently, this motion will sometimes go to the whole up and to the side thing. Will sometimes go to recents, but sometimes it'll do the quick switch thing. So it should be, in my opinion at least, is a low swipe to either side for the quick switch and a true up and to the side for recents. The difference would be the height you swipe up to before going to the side. It also makes sense for these two actions to be similar, since they're both for switching between apps, instead of home and recents being the similar ones. And as for the whole similar to Apple thing, that could have its advantages, honestly. With similar navigation methods, an iOS user could easily pick up an Android phone and be able to use it. Now, of course, we'd still have advantages such as a universal backup function, improved notification system, greater customization, etc. But it would be nice if, when I had a friend who needed to use my phone real quick for something, for them to not be completely lost using it, which, surprisingly enough, has happened a lot to me. I'm gonna get crucified by the Android community for saying. Now, at the end of the day, I'm gonna keep using the new gestures, because they're not unpleasant to use. With the exception of recents function, they follow material design, and that's what's important. Now, I'll probably be back next year when Google changes them again, so I'll see you guys then. But for now, leave a like if you liked the video, if you have any of your own experiences with the navigation system, your own suggestions for what it should be, leave them in the comments down below, and make sure you stay subscribed for more cool videos like this one. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.